Hello students, you have learned up to classification of bones. Now we will discuss Wahl's law, parts of young or growing bone, law of ossification and growing end of the bone, growth of long bone, blood supply of bones and clinical anatomy. Wahl's law or trajectory theory of Wahl's. According to this law, bone formation is directly proportional to stress and strain. There are two types of forces. One is tensile force and another is compressive force. Both forces favors bone formation in appropriate condition. Architecture of the cancellous bone can be demonstrated with the help of Wahl's law. Cancellous bone shows the trabecula, and these trabecula are arranged according to line of maximum internal stress. Here you can see the upper end of femur showing pressure and tension lamella. Pressure lamella are arranged parallel to the weight transmission and tension lamella are arranged right angle to the pressure lamella. Compact arrangement of pressure lamella to form bony buttress to provide additional support to the neck of femur. That compact arrangement is called as calcar femorale. This calcar femorale can be asked as an objective question like, what is calcar femorale? Compact arrangement of pressure lamella to form bony buttress to provide additional support to the neck of femur. Now you know that this trabecula or lamella arrange themselves according to line of maximum internal stress. If there is fracture and that fracture heals improperly, what happens? These lamella arrange themselves along with the new line of stress. So what happens due to this improper arrangement of these lamella? Sometimes patient complains pain at the site of fracture in later of life. Now, center of ossification. What is ossification? Ossification is the process of bone formation. See, this is the figure of cartilaginous model which is made up of hyaline cartilage. Now, ossification is the process which involves differentiation of osteoblasts which secrete characteristic intercellular substance including collagen fibers, and then calcification takes place within this intercellular substance by depositing calcium phosphate salts. So this entire process is called as ossification. In fetal life, all the long bones form from hyaline cartilaginous model. Area from where bone formation start in cartilaginous model, that areas are called as center of ossification. These center of ossification are of two types, primary center and secondary center. What is primary center? Primary center is that from which main part of the bone is ossified. As a rule, primary center appears before birth. But there are some exceptions that primary centers of carpal bones, all the carpal bones, you can see here carpal bones, and primary centers of all the tarsal bones except talus, calcaneum and cuboid are appears after birth. What is secondary center? Secondary center is that from which accessory parts of the bone, that accessory parts are ends of the long bone, appears. So as a rule, secondary center appears after birth, but there are some exceptions, that is lower end of the femur. See, this is the femur. So exceptions are lower end of the femur and upper end of the tibia. Their secondary centers appear before birth. So in summary, primary center that appears before birth and from which main part means shaft of the bone is ossified. Secondary center appear after birth from which accessory part means ends are ossified. Now, one medical legal importance related to secondary center for the lower end of femur. As you know, this is the exception of secondary center, lower end of femur. So it appears where generally it is the secondary center. It should appear after birth, but this is the exception. It appears before birth. So if you found newborn which was dead, and if you take the X-ray of lower end of the femur, and in that X-ray if you find there is ossified secondary center, then you can determine the age of that dead newborn. That is, that newborn was full term, means it has crossed 9 months. So this clinical aspect or medical legal aspect you should remember. Now, parts of young or growing long bone. You are aware of that typical long bone develops from the hyaline cartilaginous model in the intrauterine life, and that develops into three parts, that is two ends and shaft. Before ossification completes, following parts can be defined into young or growing long bone, that are epiphysis, epiphyseal plate of cartilage, diaphysis and metaphysis. What is epiphysis? Epiphysis is the part of bone which develops from the secondary center after birth. It is the accessory part of the bone. Diaphysis is the part of bone which develops from the primary center of ossification before the birth, and it is the main part of the bone. What is metaphysis? That is epiphyseal end of diaphysis, or end of the diaphysis facing towards epiphysis is called as metaphysis. What is epiphyseal plate of cartilage? It is the plate of hyaline cartilage which intervenes between epiphysis and metaphysis. Okay, so young or growing long bone presents four parts: epiphysis, epiphyseal plate of cartilage, diaphysis and metaphysis. We will discuss each one. First is epiphysis, that is develops from the secondary center of ossification. Next is epiphyseal plate of cartilage. As you know, this epiphyseal plate of cartilage is made up of hyaline cartilage and intervenes between the epiphysis and diaphysis. The long bone grows in a length with the help of proliferation of cells present into epiphyseal plate of cartilage. As long as bone grows in the length, epiphyseal plate of cartilage persists. What happens? Once full length of the long bone is achieved, When usually after puberty, that epiphyseal plate of cartilage is replaced by bone. It is known that ossification begins earlier in female than the male, and fusion of these epiphyses with the diaphyses occur earlier, means 2 to 3 years earlier in female than that of male. And this epiphyseal plate of cartilage is supplied by the epiphyseal artery and metaphyseal artery. This arterial supply we will see later on. Next is metaphysis. What is metaphysis? That you know, epiphyseal end of diaphysis. That is called as metaphysis. It is actively growing area of long bone, and long bone grows in the length at the expense of metaphysis. Now, this metaphysis has rich blood supply. It is profusely supplied by arteries, that is the nutrient artery, metaphyseal artery and epiphyseal artery. Now, before fusion of diaphysis and epiphysis, what happens? These arteries makes the hairpin-like bend or loops here. So, and this artery, apart from forming a hairpin-like loop, they are the end arteries. So, what happens in the children? Whatever the microorganism or emboli circulating in the blood, they are easily trapped within this hairpin band, and this leads to what? Infection. So, metaphysis is most commonly affected by infection in the children. Now, what happens when this epiphysis fuses with the diaphysis? Means after epiphyseal fusion, this nutrient artery, metaphyseal artery makes anastomosis with each other, and there is no longer lasting that hairband like loop, and chances of infection are less in the adult. So, detail of this we will see in the blood supply. Next is this metaphysis is the site for the attachment of muscles, some ligaments and joint capsule. So, this metaphysis is constantly subjected to the strain produced by this muscle, and this shearing strain produce sometimes infection within the metaphysis. Sometimes what happens? Joint capsule. This part of metaphysis lies within the joint capsule, and what happens? Infection from the metaphysis can spread to the joint capsule, or infection from the joint capsule also can spread to the metaphysis. Okay, so these are the parts of young or growing long bone. Second thing is this epiphyseal plate of cartilage. After puberty, it is replaced by bone. So the fusion of metaphysis with the epiphysis is represented by epiphyseal line. I have one bone. You can see in this bone. This is the humerus bone. This is the upper end, and this is the shaft. Epiphysis and diaphysis, and you can clearly see this is the young bone. So here is the epiphyseal line, which represents what? Fusion of metaphysis with the epiphysis. Now, if you take the X-ray of growing children, means young individual, where the epiphyseal fusion has not take place. So, in that X-ray, this shaft appears radio-opaque, means what? White. And these two ends also appear radio-opaque, means white. But this region of epiphyseal plate of cartilage appears black, or I can say radiolucent. Okay. So, you should remember this appearance of parts of bone within the X-ray. Now, epiphysis. What is epiphysis? Ends or tip of bone which develops from the secondary center are called as epiphysis. Epiphysis can be asked as a short note. So many objective questions can be asked from the different types of the epiphysis, and viva questions also can be asked from the examples of epiphysis. So, what are the types of epiphysis? They are pressure epiphysis, traction epiphysis, atavistic epiphysis, and aberrant epiphysis. First is pressure epiphysis. Pressure epiphysis is articular and helps in the weight transmission. They protect the epiphyseal plate of cartilage. What are the examples of pressure epiphysis? They are head of the humerus, head of the femur, and condyles of femur and tibia. Also, lower end of the radius are the example of pressure epiphysis. Next is traction epiphysis. What is traction epiphysis? They are formed due to pull of some muscles. Ligaments and tendons are also attached to the traction epiphysis. They are non-articular and does not take part in the weight transmission. What are the example of traction epiphysis? They are tubercles of lesser and greater. Tubercle of humerus are example of traction epiphysis. Also, you can see this is femur. So, this is the greater trochanter and this one is the lesser trochanter. So, greater trochanter and lesser trochanter are also example of traction epiphysis. So, examples summary: tubercles of humerus and trochanters of femur are example of traction epiphysis. Next is atavistic epiphysis. As name suggests, it is phylogenetically independent bone and it is attached secondarily to the host bone to receive the nutrition from the host. Examples, two examples are there in the atavistic epiphysis, that is coracoid process of scapula. This is the scapula bone. You can see this is the coracoid process of scapula. And another example is posterior tubercle of talus. This is the talus bone and this is the posterior tubercle of talus, that is the os trigonum. So, two classical examples are known in the human body, that is the coracoid process of scapula and os trigonum. And this atavistic epiphysis grows like a parasite. Next classification is aberrant epiphysis. These aberrant epiphyses are not usually present. They are present at the unusual end of short long bone. What are the examples of aberrant epiphyses? See, this is the articulated hand and these are the metacarpals. Metacarpals are numbered from lateral to medial side as first metacarpal, second, third, fourth and fifth. You know, normally epiphysis in the metacarpals, as it is an example of miniature long bone or short bone, that is normally present in the first metacarpal as a base and other metacarpal in the head of metacarpals. So, if this epiphysis is present in case of first metacarpal near the head and in the other metacarpal near the base, and then these are the example of aberrant epiphysis. Now, what happens if more than one epiphysis are present at one end or both end of the bone, then epiphysis can be classified as simple epiphysis or compound epiphysis. How? In simple epiphysis, what happens? Individual epiphysis unites with the diaphysis by means of single individual epiphyseal plate of cartilage. What is the example of simple epiphysis? That is the upper end of femur. You can see here, this is the greater trochanter, lesser trochanter and head of the femur. These three epiphyses unite with the diaphysis by means of separate epiphyseal plate of cartilage. What happens in the compound epiphysis? In compound epiphysis, the multiple epiphyses unite with each other first, and that united epiphysis later on unites with the diaphysis by means of single plate of epiphyseal cartilage. So, what are the examples of the compound epiphysis? That is the upper and lower end of humerus. Upper and lower end of humerus are the example of compound epiphysis. So, here whole united epiphysis unites with the diaphysis by means of single plate of epiphyseal cartilage. Now, law of union of epiphysis or law of ossification. Before going to the detail of law of ossification, few basic things you should remember. That is, see, this is the humerus, which is the example of typical long bone. So, it has two ends having epiphyses. Now, these two epiphyses does not fuse simultaneously with the diaphysis. Out of these two epiphyses, one epiphysis fuses with the diaphysis earlier than that of another epiphysis. So, the epiphysis which fuses last with the diaphysis, that end of the bone or that epiphysis grows for a longer time than that of another epiphysis. So, this end is called as growing end. So, what is growing end of the bone? The end of the bone where epiphyseal fusion is delayed or secondary center fuses last, that end is called as growing end of the bone. Now, growing end of the bone can be determined with the help of demonstrating the direction of nutrient foramen. So, this is the humerus bone. You can see this is the nutrient foramen which conveys nutrient vessels to the bone. This nutrient foramen is situated at the middle of the shaft of the bone. So, seeing the direction of the nutrient foramen, always the growing end is situated against the direction of nutrient foramen. So, for remembering the direction of nutrient foramen, there is one dictum, that is what? To the elbow I go and from the knee I flee. So, we will see this direction of nutrient foramen in this skeleton. So, you can see this is the elbow joint. So, for the direction of the nutrient foramen, what dictum says? To the elbow I go. So, it is like this. So, the growing end is situated against the direction of nutrient foramen. So, what is the growing end in case of upper limb? That is the upper end of humerus and lower end of radius and ulna. For the lower limb, what dictum says? From the knee I flee. So, direction of the nutrient foramen in case of lower limb, that is against the knee joint. So, which are the growing ends in the lower limb? That is the lower end of femur and upper end of tibia and fibula. Okay. So, remember this dictum, to the elbow I go and from the knee I flee, to remember the growing end of upper limb and lower knee. Now, law of union of epiphyses, which is also called as law of ossification. This law states that epiphysis which appears first unites last with the diaphysis and vice versa, or secondary center which appears first unites last with the diaphysis. However, this law is violated by the fibula. Fibula is the example of typical long bone. You can see this is the left side of fibula. You can see here, this is the fibula which violates the law of ossification. How this fibula violates the law of ossification, that can be explained within this figure. You can see this is the fibula at the time of birth, which shows the two epiphyses. Now, as a rule, one rule is there when there is two types of epiphyses, that is pressure epiphysis and traction epiphysis. Both types of epiphysis are present in a single bone. Then, as a rule, pressure epiphysis appears first, then that of traction epiphysis. In fibula, the upper end is the example of traction epiphysis and lower end is the example of pressure epiphysis. So, as a rule, this pressure epiphysis has to appear first. So, it appears at the age of first year. Now, according to the growing end theory, the upper end of the fibula, that is the example of growing end. So, this growing end appears the third to fourth year of life, and it has to, due to it is a growing end, it has to fuse last. So, it fuses at the age of 17th to 19th year. So, you can see here the epiphysis which appear first in fibula fuses with the diaphysis first, and in the upper end, the epiphysis which appears last, that fuses with the diaphysis last, in opposite to law of ossification, which states that the epiphysis which appears first unites last and which appears last unites first. So, you can remember these examples, most frequently asked viva question and objective question. Now, growth of long bone. The long bone grows in a length by multiplication of cells present in the epiphyseal plate of cartilage. So, lengthwise growth of the bone or length of the bone is increased by the multiplication of cells present in the epiphyseal plate of cartilage. The thickness of the bone, that is increased by deposition of cells beneath the periosteum. So, cells present in the deeper layers of periosteum multiply and they increase the thickness of the bone. So, this method of bone deposition at the surface and at the ends, that type of the growth of bone, that is called as oppositional growth of the bone. And to maintain the appropriate shape of the long bone, unwanted bone should be removed, and this unwanted bone will be removed by the osteoclast, and this process is called as remodeling. So, bone grows by means of appositional method, by depositing the new cells at the periphery by osteoblast and at the ends also by the osteoblast. Now you know this epiphyseal plate of cartilage helps in the lengthwise growth of the long bone. If there is damage or injury to the epiphyseal plate of cartilage, that leads to stunted growth, particularly if the epiphyseal plate of cartilage is situated at the growing end, and if it is damaged, then it leads to the stunted growth. Now, blood supply of bone. Blood supply means what? It includes both arterial supply and venous drainage. In case of bone, veins usually accompanies the arteries, and nutrition to the bone differs according to the types of bones. So here we will describe the blood supply of typical long bone. Typical long bone is supplied by 4 sets of arteries, that are nutrient artery, epiphyseal artery, metaphyseal artery and periosteal artery. Nutrient artery enters into the bone through nutrient foramen at the middle of the shaft of the bone. Before entering into the bone, nutrient artery shows tortuous course. Why nutrient artery is tortuous? Tortuosity of the nutrient artery helps to decrease the blood pressure, and it allows the movement of the bone without affecting the nutrient artery. After entering the bone, the nutrient artery shows oblique course within the cortex. After reaching the medullary cavity, nutrient artery divides into 2 branches, that is, one branch is ascending branch and another is descending branch. These 2 branches again divide into small parallel branches to reach at the metaphysis. After reaching the metaphysis, this arteries shows hairpin-like loop or bend. You can see this is the site for metaphysis and hairpin bend or hairpin loop of nutrient arteries. Apart from forming this loop, the nutrient arteries, these branches are end arteries. So what happened before epiphyseal fusion? You can see here on this end the epiphyseal plate of cartilage has not fused with the diaphysis or it is not replaced by the bone. So due to these end arteries and hairpin loop bends, whatever the microorganisms, bacteria, emboli circulating in the blood are easily trapped within these hairpin bends, and due to this fact, the osteomyelitis is most common in the children at where metaphysis. So metaphysis is the most common site of the osteomyelitis in children. Now, what happens in the adult? In the adult, epiphysis has fused with the diaphysis, and at that time these arteries forms the anastomosis with periosteal, epiphyseal and metaphyseal arteries. So circulation is established, and due to this fact there are less chances of osteomyelitis in the adult. Nutrient artery supplies inner 2/3 of cortex and medullary cavity. Okay, now next is the periosteal artery. Periosteal artery ramify beneath the periosteum. They are more numerous at the site of attachment of muscles and ligament. And this periosteal artery supply outer 1/3 of the cortex. Metaphyseal artery. How they are derived? Metaphyseal artery derives from the anastomosis surrounding the joints, and they supply metaphysis and makes anastomosis with the periosteal and epiphyseal artery. Now, epiphyseal artery. Epiphyseal artery can be of 2 types. In first type of epiphyseal artery directly enters into the epiphysis. Now, there are 2 possibilities here the epiphysis is surrounded by articular hyaline cartilage. In first case, this articular hyaline cartilage is continuous with the epiphyseal plate of cartilage. So in that case, epiphyseal artery has to pierce the epiphyseal plate of cartilage to enter into the epiphysis. So, if there is damage to the epiphyseal plate of cartilage, that leads to the damage to the epiphyseal artery, and that will lead to the avascular necrosis of that epiphysis. So, that is one case. In second case, this articular hyaline cartilage is not continuous with the epiphyseal cartilage, and in that case, the epiphyseal artery has not to pierce this epiphyseal plate of cartilage. In that case, avascular necrosis of that particular epiphysis are not occurring. So you have to remember these two type of epiphyseal artery, two mode of entry of epiphyseal artery. Now, in case of miniature long bone. Miniature long bone, as you know, it has only one epiphysis. So it has only one metaphysis. What happens into the miniature long bone? Nutrient artery, after entering into the medullary cavity, it immediately breaks up into the plexus. So the chances of, due to the presence of this plexus, the shaft of the miniature long bone is the most common site for the infection, particularly in children. In adult, this nutrient artery is replaced by the periosteal artery. So these two objective questions can be asked from the blood supply of bone. That is, first one is osteomyelitis is more common in children at metaphysis. And second, the shaft of the miniature long bone is most commonly involved in infection in case of children. Blood supply of short bones. Short bone examples of short bones are carpal bones and tarsal bones. As you know, the short bones have 4 articular surfaces and 2 non-articular surfaces. So, vessels or arteries supplying the short bones enter into the bones through their non-articular surfaces. Okay. Then, next is flat bones. Scapula is the example of flat bone. So, in flat bone, nutrient artery enters into the compact part of the bone, ramify beneath the periosteum and supplies. Also, periosteal artery supply major part of the flat bone. What is vertebra? Vertebra is the example of irregular bone. Now, you can see this vertebra. This is in anatomical position. This part is body. It has anterior surface and posterior surface. You can see so many small openings here. They are called as basivertebral foramen. So, a set of small vessels enters into the body of vertebra through this basivertebral foramen. Then, one set of vessels enters into the body through its anterolateral surface, and one set, you can see this is the posterior part of the vertebra. You can see the transverse process and various processes of vertebra. So one set of vessels enter through the root of transverse process and supplies the pedicle, lamina and various processes of vertebra.
Now, terms used for describing bone features. These are the terms that are elevations, depressions, openings and smooth articular areas. So while describing the gross features of the bone, these are the terms we are going to frequently use. So elevation can be in the form of linear elevation, sharp elevation and rounded elevation. Linear elevation can be in the form of line, leap, ridge and crest. Sharp elevation can be in the form of spine, styloid process and cornu. Rounded elevation can be in the form of tubercle, tuberosity, epicondyle, malleolus and trochanter. Depressions. Depressions are in the form of groove, fovea, fossa and notch. Openings. Openings are in the form of foramen, hiatus and canal. Smooth articular areas within the bone are in the form of head, capitulum, trochlea, facet and condyle. So, we will see these terms in the bone. See, this is the humerus bone. So, it has two ends and shaft. In the upper end, you can see this is the smooth articular area which is called as head, which projects beyond the neck of humerus. So smooth articular area which is called as head. Here in the upper end you can see that small elevation, that is called as lesser tubercle. Larger elevation, this one, that is called as greater tubercle. So these two are lesser tubercle and greater tubercle. In between these two tubercle, you can see one groove. This is the groove which is a ditch like, which provides passage to the tendon and blood vessel. This groove is bounded on either side by means of lip. So you can see this is the medial lip, this one is the medial lip, this is the lateral lip. Okay, so tubercle groove. Near the lower end, you can see here, this is the lower end of humerus. You can see small rounded line that is in the form of ridge. So they are lateral and medial supracondylar ridge. So you can say this is the ridge, small rounded line. Then this is the lower end. So here you can see the projection, that is the lateral epicondyle and medial epicondyle. Here is the smooth articular area in the form of rounded elevation. This is the rounded smooth articular area that is called as capitulum, head-like, circular, and this is the pulley shaped smooth articular area that is trochlea. This is the femur bone. Again, you can see smooth articular head. Then here you can see the large elevation for the attachment of the muscle, that is called as trochanter. So this is larger one, this is the greater trochanter. This one is the greater trochanter and this elevation, this is the lesser trochanter. From greater trochanter to lesser trochanter, you can see this line. This is intertrochanteric line. This one. On the posterior side, you can see this one, this elevation. This elevation is called as intertrochanteric crest. Here, in the head of the femur, you can see the small rounded pit. This one. This pit is called as fovea for the attachment of ligament. So this is the fovea. Then near the lower end, you can see two smooth articular areas. They are the condyle. They are in the form of knuckle-like projection. And above the condyle, you can see this small projection that is called as epicondyle. Okay, so this is the medial epicondyle of femur. This is the scapula bone. So you can see here hollow depression that is in the form of fossa, that is glenoid fossa. Hollow depression. Then you can see the projection in the form of spine. This is the spine of scapula. So this is the projection on the dorsal surface of scapula. You can also see curved area that is in the form of notch. So this is the suprascapular notch. You can see here. This is the hip bone. You can see this is the ischium part of the hip bone and this large tuberosity. This is the large elevation that is called as tuberosity. So you can see this is the ischial tuberosity. This is thin elongated projection that is called as spine of vertebra. So you can see this is the spine and here you can see the one opening, this opening within the bone. This is called as foramen. Here is the vertebral foramen. You can also see the small foramina here in the interior of skull for the passage of nerves and blood vessels. Also, you can see here the styloid process, elongated styloid process. You can see canal. Probe is going inside the canal, external auditory canal. So this is the canal, this is the styloid process. This is the sacrum bone. On the dorsal surface of sacrum bone, you can see this one is the hiatus. hiatus of sacrum. This is the fibula bone. At the lower end of the fibula, you can see the malleolus. This is the malleolus of the fibula. Lateral malleolus. Now, coming to the applied anatomy or clinical anatomy of the bone. Most of the clinical anatomy of the bone we have covered along with the related topics. Remaining are fracture. What is fracture? Breach in the continuity of the bone. So, fracture, that is the breach in the continuity of bone. So, fracture of the bone can be of two types. Simple fracture and compound fracture. Simple fracture is the fracture that the wound does not communicate with the fractured area, or you can say the fractured bone does not communicate with the skin wound. So this is the closed type of fracture. In open or compound fracture, the fracture area communicates with the skin wound. Now, the nerves can be related to the some parts of the bone, and if there is fracture of the bone and that nerve can be damaged in that fracture, then what happens? The muscle supplied by that particular nerve can be paralyzed. So you should remember, suppose this is the humerus bone. So on the posterior surfaces of humerus, here the radial nerve is related. So in the fracture of the humerus, if this nerve is damaged, then the muscles supplied by this radial nerve can be paralyzed. Next clinical anatomy, that is bone marrow biopsy. Bone marrow biopsy can be taken from the manubrium sterni. See, this is the manubrium sterni, which is a part of sternum. So this is the manubrium sterni, which is the site for the red bone marrow. Another site for the bone marrow biopsy, that is iliac crest. You can see this is the upper end of hip bone. So this is the iliac crest, which is the another site for the bone marrow biopsy. Thank you.